Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me, Barry Coombs for Gestalt IT. I'm really excited today to be recording this video with Ajay Singh of Pure Storage, following all the amazing news and announcements that happened during the Pure launch event earlier on this week. Thank you ever so much for joining me today, Ajay.
You're welcome. Good morning, Barry.
Yes, it's been difficult to try and sync up time zones with me being over the other side of the pond, but it's great to finally get together and be able to have this conversation. So I understand from your side, you're just about to approach your 10th month at Pure Storage after kind of quite a long period at VMware. So be interested to understand kind of what are your main takeaways from that short time at Pure Storage, and how's your past kind of set you up for this role at Pure?
Absolutely. I have to tell you, I'm just very, very impressed with all, what's going on over at Pure. Just to start off with just an amazing team. Pure just recruits, just the, top-notch, top-flight folks. And you can see that in the quality of the people. And what that has translated to Pure is a whole bunch of first mover advantages in the marketplace, whether it's Flash or QLC, Kubernetes data management as a service. But finally, what really got me super excited is the commitment to the cloud operating model, with kind of an outcome focus, and kind of links very tightly to my background at VMware. I ran the cloud management business unit, which was a lot about building the cloud operating model. And it's great to see Charlie's vision on kind of driving that outcome-centric cloud operating model.
Definitely. It's an interesting time in IT at the moment. And I think there's a lot of organizations that are really struggling on how do they reposition themselves from being very product centric to be more services centric. And it's been interesting to see Pure's approach to that. And I'm watching the Portworx journey with great interest. It's something that's been quite new to me, but to see how Pure has handled that acquisition, not tried to just mash it up into a set of products that were there, but still be able to use that with the other products in your portfolio, and also other people. You haven't got a Pure array, that's fine. You can still use things like Portworx and benefit from that. That's really interesting. So before we get stuck into the details of the announcement, there was a lot of talk about Pure's vision as part of the announcements the other day. And it's always good for me to be able to understand the vision of the company. And this is one thing I really liked about VMware, with Pat Gelsinger at the helm kind of thing. It was very clear where the company was heading. And then year after year, there was talk about how they were delivering against that vision. So I think that's really important for a company. So would you be able to spend a little bit of time just talking about Pure's vision and the promises that you've made that were talked about at the event?
Absolutely. So, our vision, essentially is to enable the technology teams to deliver what we call multi-cloud storage and data services for both traditional applications and modern applications, so both kinds of applications. And it really builds on a whole bunch of, I would say, unique capability. That's a journey. It's a progression, if you may, from where Pure is coming. And the progression is from, that kind of ethos of being an industry first, as I mentioned, with Flash, but being recognized, Gartner MQ 7 years in a row, leader in primary storage, Kubernetes data management recognized by GigaOm, leader again, fast file and object again, for unstructured data, leader again, from a GigaOm perspective. I would also say amazing quality, if you may. We have one of the industry's highest NPS scores, north of 80%. Where most of the industry is in the 20s and 30s and 40s. So just this whole ethos that our founder cause drove, what we say simplicity at scale, make it like the iPhone of storage. You plug it in, the manual is the front and back of a business card, and boom, you're kind of off to the races, right? So that whole buildup, and then that simplicity really enables this whole, ability to drive an as a service, a cloud operating model, and the first mover advantage with our Pure as a service, true outcome-centric SLAs versus the competition that's mostly doing a CapEx to OpEx financial repackaging, if you may. So a lot of these things kind of building up to that vision, as I talked about, to enable technology teams to deliver multi-cloud storage and data services for both traditional and modern applications.
Definitely. The things that really stood out to me, I'm quite a simple soul, and I believe that enterprise technology does not need to be overly complicated. I believe the industry we in has survived too long by making things too complicated. So there's more services needed, more wrap needed, kind of thing. So to see that simplicity was really important and high on your scale was really impressive to me. And the other thing around the service offerings certainly resonate very much with what you're saying there. There's lots of people just turning capex into opex and saying they've got a service model, but in my opinion, to have a service model, you've got to deliver a real outcome for the customer, real value for the
Yes,
customer, not just change the financial model from one to another.
yes.
So let's get started in the detail of the announcements. During the Pure launch event, there was 3 announcements, and these kind of weren't new hardware, fancy new lights on your bezels, ever faster storage happening or anything like that. Can I ask you just for a brief overview for the audience as to what those 3 announcements were and what they mean to Pure's vision?
Yeah, we had 3 announcements. One was called Pure Fusion, Portworx Data Services, and some enhancements to Pure One. And this really, as I mentioned, is a progression and taking that simplicity and automation to the next tier, essentially saying we kind of view modern data storage and management essentially as services delivered as code, managed with AI. That's kind of the heart of it. So Pure Fusion effectively is for all of Pure's assets, making it into a storage cloud. Now we can have hundreds of arrays behind a kind of a storage as code API surface, so that you can scale infinitely, can do self-service, you can do intelligent workload management, and do some seamless automation through kind of this storage as code cloud operating model. And with Cloud Block Store, effectively be able to scale even to the public cloud. So that's what Pure Fusion was about. It's around our assets delivered, storage as code, make it invisible, make it disappear. Just a line of code in a Git repository, take it through a CI/CD process, you bring it up, tear it down, bring it up, tear it down, and it's just a line of code. That was Pure Fusion. Portworx Data Services builds on top of the goodness that we have in our leadership with Portworx in the enterprise Kubernetes data management space. And Portworx Enterprise already does a whole ton of automation around Kubernetes, backup, data migration, restore, those kind of functions already, does all that automation. And also remember, Portworx can run on any infrastructure, certainly our infrastructure with Pure Fusion and all of that, but with Dell infrastructure, NetApp infrastructure, AWS, Azure, GCP infrastructure, storage infrastructure, not a problem. It also runs with anybody's Kubernetes, whether it's OpenShift or Tanzu or GKE or EKS, anybody's Kubernetes. So it kind of gives you that any model, no lock-in. And then we've taken it a step further up to really start to do the automation associated with modern data services. These are services like Kafka, Spark, Elastic, MongoDB, etc. So you get this broad range of what we say modern databases as a service, and effectively through one click, boom, you get it deployed. And so now as a technology team in a company, you can become a modern data services providers to your developers and to your lines of businesses, so they can now go about the business of mining the data, whether it's your data or third-party data, for insights, unique insights that are going to drive a competitive edge in the digital transformation. So that's what PDS is about. It's again a first mover advantage in keeping with what Pure is really good at. And finally, Pure One, we've done some enhancements around subscription planning, container topology, etc., so that both these announcements, Fusion and PDS, Portworx Data Services, have the AI engine kind of adjusting to be able to kind of operate to back those offerings as well. So net, a greater progression to this whole notion of services delivered as code, managed, self-managed with AI at the back end.
Definitely. And I think that just to reflect on 2 of those things there, with Pure Fusion, this wasn't just an announcement where we've now got a manager of managers. So you now have a GUI that you can go to, and there's a lovely picture with a map that shows you where all your arrays are. This was infrastructure as code. This was storage as code. This was be able to be directly interface with the developers, with the tools that they're using, with ops teams being able to interact with that as well. And then Portworx data services, as I've already said, I think Portworx is a real game changer. And the fact that Pure is treating this as not just a bigger part of the Pure family, but it's a separate product that does support all the wider array vendors and things like that, as well as you hope, Pure as well, to be able to deliver those as a click or as a line of code rolling out of databases and those services, I think is really important. But me as an ops guy, the bit that is really important is those day two services that are then being taken care of.
Yes.
As someone that's dabbled with being a DBA in the past, I know all too much that when you're in that mentality of rolling something out, just get something working, all of a sudden it can creep into production and you realize you've not got the right replication plans in there, the data disaster recovery, the backup and things like that. So the fact that you are assisting IT teams take that into consideration, I think is really important.
Absolutely. That's what we're all about. We want to make IT teams heroes to their lines of businesses and to their development teams.
Definitely. We like that. Let's make IT teams heroes. So the final piece then, I found it quite informative from a IT operations perspective, from a technical person perspective. Pure was setting clear expectations where the roles in the IT industry were going, what the future of the role was. So one was the fact the IT teams need to become the new data services provider. And the term reduce human middleware was used a number of times during the launch. Would you just be able to expand what those mean to you and how your customers can embrace the new waves of technology through Pure with them?
Absolutely. So if you think about this whole journey to cloud that's happening in the industry, it's ultimately all about a journey of automation. How can we continue to automate so that effectively and simplicity, so automation and simplicity. And a lot of that automation is kind of cutting out the mundane tasks of backing things up, doing disaster recovery plans, ransomware things, deployment, and so that teams can start to offer and become service providers and make that service so simple that it becomes a line of code. A line of code that goes in a Git repository. I can change the parameters on the line of code, and it can go through a Jenkins CI/CD process, and it goes like any other line of code. So infrastructure as code effectively makes the infrastructure invisible, but just to do that, all the help required for the infrastructure teams, the things that you talked about, the automation required to make that easy. That's what it's all about. And so I think that's what the journey is about, and that's what we're trying to do.
Definitely. I really like there the point that you made around the becoming a service provider to your developers in that example, your internal IT. You are effectively competing with the cloud providers and an internal IT team today. So you need to think like them. You need to enable your developers in this example to be able to interact with your services you provide as easily as they could by chucking a credit card in and going to AWS or Azure or something like that. And the point you made around transparent, making that infrastructure transparent, I always say when I'm talking to people, I've kind of got this lifelong ambition that I want to make technology transparent, not meaning that I want to be giving people amazing screens that they can see through and see their neighbor eating the lunch behind them. But actually, we need to stop thinking about, oh, how do I get this to work? It needs to become second nature. And to a developer, what are the lines of code I need to do to interface with this? I don't need to go through a ticket and a rigmarole to get a piece of storage configured and then worry how the IT team are going to onboard this.
Yeah, I was just going to say the operative word here is cooperation. So I would say you're kind of competing maybe with the cloud, but you're also embracing it. And that's the whole thing with Portworx being multi-cloud. You can run on anybody's Kubernetes, the cloud Kubernetes, cloud infrastructure on-prem. So as a technology team now, you're certainly becoming a multi-cloud service provider, and which is really from what the business is looking for.
Definitely. It's about making those right choices at the right time. And from an operations team, setting those standards, having all that ready at the back end so it can be consumed by those people that need to consume it. Thank you ever so much for your time today, Ajay. I hope those that have watched us have found this video informative. I encourage you to check out the rest of the Gestalt IT blogs, but also to go and check out Pure Storage to go and find out more about the announcements. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Barry. Thank you all.